With the HD render pipeline, Unity introduced really beautiful built-in subsurface scattering like I'm showing in this video here. But it's a little bit confusing to set up, so I wanted to show you how to do that. I'm going to be using the shell model from 3dscans.com, as well as a blank Unity project with the HDRP preview template in Unity 2019. So I've created a blank scene with nothing in it, and let's just drag in our shell here. It's going to import for a little bit. And then we'll drag it into the scene view here. We'll create a light so that we can see it. Let's create a spotlight. And it looks a little bit strange because this model actually needs a double-sided material. So we'll create a new material. We'll call it SSS for subsurface scattering. And then we'll make it double-sided and drag it onto our object. So now when we look towards our light, which is up here, through our object, we don't see much. The object is shadowing itself, so we can't see through it, which is what we want. We want, with subsurface scattering, we want some light to shine through. So let's change our material to subsurface scattering. And this at first is a little bit confusing because this isn't what we want. And then also, if we change our light here to have shadows, then we're back to square one. So the first step to get real subsurface scattering is to create a diffusion profile. And without a diffusion profile, we can't really do much. So let's create rendering diffusion profile. Let's call it test. And then let's drag that into our, let's try to select it here. And still we don't really have anything happening. And then if we go into our diffusion profile and mess with things, nothing really happens here either, which is kind of confusing. And in fact, what we need to do is go to our project and then settings, HD render pipeline asset, and then make sure that subsurface scattering is enabled here, which it I think is by default. And then also make sure that subsurface scattering is enabled down here. You can check the high quality box if you want. It makes it, I think, 2.5 times slower, but prettier. But what we really need to do is add, for some reason, our diffusion profile to our diffusion profile list. Let's find it here. And then we then need to go back to our material. And then for some reason select that again. And then let's double click to jump into our diffusion profile. And now when we change something like the scattering distance, something should actually happen. So you can start to see a little bit of light coming through over there. And what you would think to do here is just to change this, but nothing actually happens. What we need to do is change the intensity down here. And so in order to get a little bit more, actually we can already kind of see that this looks pretty cool. If we go to back to our material, we can see that if we turn off our diffusion profile, we go back to this kind of harsh light. But if we turn back on our diffusion profile, we have this really beautiful lighting. And to make this look even cooler, let's just add a coat to make it a little bit shinier, and then maybe make it a little bit smoother. And so let's look briefly at the options for the diffusion profile, which is really where most of the action happens. We can change the thickness remap, but that's not doing anything right now. We can also change this to be a thick object and then try to change it. Still not doing anything. Let's change the intensity a little bit. And then now we can see that as we move this down, it makes it a little bit shine through a little bit more. If we move this up, it should make it less come through, I think. It's not, can't move that. Yeah. And then the real thing that I've mostly been playing with is just the intensity option here. We can also change the transmission tint if you want to have, for example, like skin, maybe a orange light coming through or something. And so this changes the light on the opposite, the light coming through on the opposite side of the light. The light up here is still going to be white. And so that's pretty much what I wanted to show. I think in Unity, what we have here is really quite beautiful, but there's just a few gotchas about how to set it up. So good luck, and let me know any feedback or what else you'd like to see.